21. All right, welcome back to the Matching Experience. We're here for number 21. We have a very, very special guest. I'm super excited to have you on. It's Jessica, and I want to make sure I say this right. Terzakis?
Yeah, close. It's Terzakis. You're like
Terzakis.
98% there.
A lot of people screw up my name too. So just to get things started off, could you kind of introduce yourself to the audience, just to give them an idea of who you are and kind of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, tuning in. I am Jessica Terzakis, and I am co-owner of a business named Terzakis and Associates. So it's my mom and I. It's a family business, and essentially what we do business consulting, and that looks like anything from I started my business, I don't know where to find my clients, I need to find more clients now, to I've got a calendar full of clients. What are my next steps? How do I grow this? How do I get out of just a slammed calendar? So it's a lot of the nuts and bolts related to building a business, and we have a lot of fun.
And it's a family business too, hey?
It is, yes. It's my mom and I.
How long have you guys been doing that?
Well, she had the business started in 2014, and I joined in 2016. So I was a teacher before I actually
Yes.
became an entrepreneur. So she had the business going, and she has like a business banking background, so it made a lot of sense for her. It was a stranger leap for me to get into it, to go from teaching high school English to entrepreneurship. But she said, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs come into this phase where they want to grow it. They're looking to bring someone on, and a lot of people want to bring on their family. Like they want a family member to join in. And so I get one of two reactions, Matt. People are either like, oh my gosh, you work with your mom? That's awesome, to, ooh, you work with your mom. How's that going? So
And hopefully it's been good.
yeah, I think one of the biggest questions that I always get is, how did you guys manage to make that work? And I think, whenever you're building a business, even if you just have two people, you have to figure out the strengths of each person. Because the way it works for the two of us, and the reason why we get along so well, is that we are opposites. She's like big picture visionary. She sees where the ship is going. And then I am really good with the finer details and following through and seeing, a task from point A to point Z. And so you don't want to have two of the same people in a business. And that's why I think people get so nervous when they're like, oh, either my mom and I are so much alike, or, they get into the pitfalls of growing a team the wrong way.
Right. So let's just kind of jump into things here. While I was kind of doing some research on yourself and your business, one of the things that I found was you guys had a tagline on your website, and it basically read, break out of your one-to-one income. Can you kind of talk to that? What does that mean, to break out of your one-to-one income?
Yeah. So many entrepreneurs that we tend to work with are service-based. That means that they are some sort of coach, some sort of consultant, or they do some, sort of marketing service. And for them, when you're building a business, your sole priority is to find one-on-one clients. It's the fastest way to make money. It's the fastest way to grow your business in the beginning. But at some point, you reach a tipping point where, at one point you wanted your calendar to be full. That's all you really wanted. And then it becomes full, and you're like, oh, okay, this is great, but now I'm working like 50 hours. I've got all these clients to manage, and you've effectively worked yourself into a job because you're beholden to these clients. And so when we say break out of the one-to-one, it's what does that next step look like, rather than just working one-to-one with clients. And so one of our specialties, one of our unique offerings, is that we help entrepreneurs in that service-based sphere monetize their intellect, monetize their experience in the form of programs and courses.
Programs, and that's a huge trend, I would say, right now on the internet, where people are making programs and courses.
Yes.
Now, you guys are professionals, I'm sure, so you probably see a lot of these courses and see a lot of mistakes happening. Can you kind of, what mistakes do you think are most common in terms of people trying to go from that one-to-one to one-to-many?
Honestly, I think the biggest mistake is that people make the jump too soon. The marketing is really good, Matt. It's make seven figures, make, the big payday, the passive income, go to the beach, sit on the beach, and then you'll kind of see the money rolling in, right? And to some extent that's true, and that can happen. but a lot of people jump into it way too soon. And so what we recommend is you've got to, kind of earn your stripes and earn your dues with one-to-one client work. You've got to get at least 10 people, 10 one-to-one clients under your belt before you're ready to first move on to like a small group. A small group means like you could work with 8 to 10 clients virtually. And so you're teaching them live. And then down the line, I mean, I wouldn't even think about doing an online course until you've been in business for maybe 3 or 4 years. Seriously. To actually make it pay off. Yeah. And I build them. I'm being very honest.
Right. And you're an expert, so your word has some weight to it.
Yeah.
I really like how you said that, because one of my mentors growing up, they used to say that you should ratchet. You should first get that first level, hit it, and then when you hit a ratchet, it stays, right? And you kind of crank it up to the next level. So for most beginners out there, the first kind of ratchet they might want to aim for, you would say, is to first fill your schedule and then look to kind of, when you're filling your schedule for the beginner, what would you say people need to work on more? Having a better product or marketing? Could you give kind of...
Sure. Well, I think part of that beginning stage is, I think, first having flexibility with whatever service you're offering, and knowing that you've got to kind of like pick one service that you want to work with and then kind of see that through, working with a few clients. Because what I notice is a lot of people they'll try one service and then they don't get any bites, and they're like, okay, well, I'll switch to the next one. And so they're switching and they aren't sticking with it long enough to actually see if it's going to work. And so I think the phrase that my mentor said to me was, pick a horse and ride it, and just know that it's going to change. My service offering has probably changed 3 to 4 times, since I've been in business. So that would be my first tip. And then the second is, when you are, either marketing, and I guess I consider networking to be part of that too, Matt, always speak to the outcome that your ideal client wants. I think so often we are in love with our process. We're in love with what we do. We're in love with our knowledge around the subject, that it gets lost on the person listening. And so I think too often we use jargon. We talk more about like, I'm going to help you put your website together. And that's not really what our ideal client cares about. It's more like, how is your website going to help me grow my business? So speak in terms of, what matters to them, what keeps them up in the middle of the night. It's tough. I say that, and that's really difficult. But those are probably the 2 of the biggest lessons I would share with a newer entrepreneur.
So instead of talking about something like features, talk more about the benefits that they're actually going to get.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned to me before we did this podcast was that yourself and your mother developed a really good kind of local name through networking. Is that on track?
Oh, yeah.
How did you guys do that?
We did it through a combination of things. I think the first thing that we did was we joined some strategic networking groups. So we found a local chamber that made sense for our business. And so what we did was we kind of looked at who's part of this chamber, who's involved, are our ideal clients part of that. And so we picked that. And then the second thing that honestly grew our business so much locally was we both joined separate BNI chapters. So if you don't know what a BNI chapter is, it's an acronym for Business Networking International. So it's a paid networking organization that if you join the right one, you work the system as they teach it, like Matt, I mean, I'm telling you, the investment into that like grew our local business. So now, I mean, I would say between the 2 of us, our business consulting clients, like 90% of those come from just BNI. And it's a really cool ripple effect, Matt, because you're in that chapter with like 30 other people, and then they work to refer you, and then whoever they refer you to, like the referrals just kind of like go from there. And so I know a lot of people will say like, well, I network everywhere and I network all the time. And I think you have to play it smart, and you also have to appreciate that so much of the business that you will get will come from face-to-face conversations, whether it's virtual or whether it's like in person, but building a business happens faster when you can do it locally, or at least face-to-face.
Oh, okay. So to make it practical for people joining that BNI, what would be like some tips you would give them to, best practices for them to network while they join? Somebody could join a chapter, or they could go into a local strategic networking group, but they might not get the same results. What would you say it led to you having a good result from it?
Two things. One, I always, no matter if it was a networking opportunity that I joined or just a networking opportunity that I visited, I would look at who was part of the room. So with BNI, you can go online, you can see who's part of the chapter, and you can kind of see like who are they, what are their professions, and see if it does make sense to go to that one. If it was another networking opportunity where, say, a person was hosting an event, I would ask the host, can I see a list of who's attending? Not to solicit, not to, try and spam or reach out to, but I want to know who's in this room that I absolutely want to connect with before the night is over. And so I think when people network, I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, he's like, all I do is network. And I said, well, do you have an idea of who you're trying to meet? And do you have a specific goal? And so absolutely, like, I think I was one of those typical, this was like within the first 6 months of joining the business. Matt, I think I went on, Eventbrite and Facebook events, and I looked for every single networking event, and you will definitely burn yourself out if that's your tactic.
Okay.
You have to be a little bit smarter. You have to think about, why am I networking? Who am I looking for? Is it a client, or is it, another like potential referral partner? How am I going to connect with them in this event? I think you just have to be a little bit more strategic about your effort time.
I love that. It reminds me of the book, The Art of War, where they talked about you got to know yourself, you got to know your enemy, you got to know your environment. And it's just having a clear intentions for what you're actually looking to do. And then, so to make it practical in this case would be kind of like, know what you're trying to get out of it, who's in the room, who do you want to connect with?
Yes. And it seems like kind of obvious. I mean, it does, but I think in the thick of our day-to-day lives and trying to grow a business, some of the obvious stuff just kind of falls to the wayside, if that makes sense. And I think that same philosophy that you just kind of laid out very nicely, Matt, applies to anything you're doing in business. Like, we were talking with someone who wanted to do like a webinar. Okay, for what? Why are you doing this? Who are you trying to reach? What's your goal?
Right.
I think we just say, like, we hear go network, or we hear go do a webinar, and we just do it without a lot of thought behind it.
I love that. So would you say one of the services that you provide is kind of making things a lot more clear, painting the picture a little bit better? People kind of jump into things without really knowing what they mean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think people are told, do this, do that. They see it on social media and they're like, great, I'm going to do it. And then the actual, roadmap to getting there is not very clear. And so, yeah, that is definitely one thing that we help our clients with.
One of the quotes that I like to live my life by, I can't remember who said it, but it's something along the lines of, you live your life to the degree that you can ask questions. If you want to live a better life, ask better questions. I'm assuming you ask these clients some good questions to kind of get their mental, their minds working. What questions could you, just some basic ones, would you give somebody right now to kind of hone in on what their vision actually is?
Well, that's a really good quote. I don't think I've ever heard of it in that way, but yeah, we do. One of my favorite things, I've been known to be put on a question quota myself, Matt. But I think, I usually start off with probably 3 staple questions if I had to think about it now, which is, who is your ideal client? Who are you trying to target? I think, again, that's one of those points where people kind of roll their eyes and are like, yeah, ideal client. I've heard of this a million times, but can you state who that is in just a few, sentences? So the first one is who's your ideal client? What specifically with breaking out of one-to-one, I ask them, how many clients have you worked with? Tell me a little bit about the clients that you have had. How many? How long have you worked with them? How much have they paid you? Some of those basic business fundamentals. And then I do ask them, why are you trying to grow this business? What's your vision, and why is that your vision? And because I think that third question really uncovers where this person, like, what growing a business means to them. Because for some people, they just want to hit a comfy, 50,000, 75,000. Other people are like, no, I want the big online presence. I want, a team. And so I think that third one really uncovers sort of their values and their bigger why.
I love this. There's two main reasons why I really like the three questions you gave there. The first one, the second one you asked, where you kind of just getting some you're quantifying a lot of what they have. How many customers have you worked with? How much have you been paid? A very important tip that one of my mentors told me was basically that quantify it. You want to know how you're doing, quantify it. Look for easy, kind of plain in the sight, obvious variables that you can quantify, because people lie, numbers don't. What doesn't get managed, or what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. So that really speaks to that, I think. And then the second thing you did right there was you asked them why they're doing that. And this seems so obvious, but just bringing your awareness to why you're doing certain things really, I find, helps kind of, would you agree, set a clearer vision. I think there's a quote by Nietzsche. He says, to any man who has a good enough why, anyhow they can basically beat, or something along those lines. But
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think probably what I'm noticing, I'm saying a lot of in this interview is, are you aware of why you're doing things? Are you sort of aware of, I think we tend to get in our own head, and I think the emotions get in the way of some of those very basic things. And so I don't always think people have a very clear reason for why they're doing things, especially, when they're newer. I think as you gain, time in your business and you gain maturity in your business, things become a little bit like, oh, it makes sense for us to do this. But in the beginning, you're just kind of all over.
I love that. Now this is kind of like a funny question I have for you here.
Yeah.
A lot of the people watching, they like general life advice. So this doesn't have to be just business, and it doesn't just have to be one thing. I don't want to limit you to too little, but keep it within maybe three at most. The question how I word it is, let's say you're being shipped off to Mars, or you're leaving Earth. You can't stay here. You're dying. You're gone, and you have to leave your child with a few life lessons. Kind of distill it all into a few paragraphs if you can. What would you leave your child with to kind of help them lead a good life?
Oh, could this be more than one?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the first one, I don't know how, this is going to sound a little bit clunky, but one of the biggest things I remember as a high school teacher was that no one really cares more about themselves than themselves. Like, stop worrying so much about what everybody else thinks, because really at the end of the day, people go through their day with their perspectives, their value system. And so just don't take anything personally is what I would say for the first piece of advice. I think the second would be that, there's no timeline. I think there's this artificial pressure to, pursue a career and stick with that career and buy a house by this age and get married by that age. And I think that, at least for me, my life has not followed that traditional timeline, and like, I'm fine. I still have a pulse and I'm still living. I think you just have to get comfortable with that. You have a path, you're going to follow that, and you really can't let these external forces kind of dictate what you're doing. And then I think the third, just always know that there's more to learn. Like, it's almost like when something finally gets easy, like, just be prepared, because you're gonna like, that's when you're ready to move to the next level. And so just kind of be patient with this process of learning, and know that you're never going to get to the point where you know everything. Like, I kind of felt that way when I was in year 6 of teaching, and then I went into entrepreneurship, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I know nothing. I had to relearn all of that. So I think getting used to that process of always like learning and relearning, and you're never quite done, I think is what I would share.
Can I talk to that point?
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's my favorite of the three you gave. But the reason why I like it reminds me of a quote by Richard Dawkins. He says something along the lines of, it's not the fastest or strongest that survive, but it's the most adaptable. And when he's talking about that, he's talking about evolution and that. But I think that applies to your mental faculties too. It's not the strongest or smartest, but the most adaptive, the most humble, that's willing to learn. For yourself, how do you apply that? What are some strategies you can use to make it practical for people that they can continuously learn?
Well, I think the first thing is, especially when you jump into entrepreneurship, you will see a lot of terms online. You'll see the terms like ideal client or sales calls or something like that. And I think the quickest response that people have when they see something that they know is, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, when you're sitting down with a consultant or someone that you're hiring to help you grow your business, be aware, just be aware of like, are you going to say I know to something, and do you honestly know it enough to teach it? Or are you just aware of it? Right? And then I think the second is, as you're growing and you're learning new things, don't forget the basics. The basics being, who is my ideal client? How much income do I need to make this month? Where am I finding these ideal clients? How many clients do I need this month? So I think it's as you're growing, don't dismiss things that you think you already know, and at the same time, don't dismiss the basics as like, I've got that. Like, I already know that.
I love that. And I think the fundamentals or the basics are generally something they're so important. I mean, growing up, I've always heard I played basketball. They say, you got to know your fundamentals, know how to do a layup, know how to shoot a jump shot. But
yes,
it applies everywhere. What were the questions? You got to know how many clients you have or how much you make. Just having those basics hit, because that's the foundation you sit on, right?
Yes. And I think you mentioned something earlier, which is, we let the emotions kind of cloud things because it's tough. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. And I think we let those things get in the way, and we forget that there's certain pillars that you need in place. And so you must know Coach John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach. Yeah. He had this really great, like, you would appreciate this. I didn't play basketball myself, but I liked the example. So I'm looking at my bookshelf, which has the book on it. But he taught his players, like, he took one practice just to teach them how to put their shoes on. And
really?
Yes, so he taught them how to put their socks on so that they wouldn't get blisters. Because if they got blisters, then they couldn't, stay in the game because their feet would get hurt. So he showed them, like, here's how you put your socks on. Here's how you tie your shoes to support your ankles. And the players were like, are you kidding me? Like, why are we spending time doing this? And it's like, look, if you can't put your socks and shoes on right, then the rest of the game almost doesn't matter. And so you see that analogy kind of, play over in entrepreneurship. So
I love this. I'm totally going to use that story from now on.
You should, just Google it because I know it's out there. Yeah.
And the other thing I did want to ask you about too was, you said there's no timeline for your life. Mm-hmm. I love this. This is so key. This is something I've experienced, and I imagine most people have as well, where they think they have to be at a certain level. I mean, you see it on the internet. People will say, I want to be a millionaire by 25, and then you could say, well, why? Where's that timeline coming from?
I love that question. Why?
Right. It's just it's the blanket that works pretty much everywhere. But still a lot of people suffer with this, and just saying, don't have that timeline, it might work, but do you think there's anything else you could use, some more like mental tools or something, another interview, cycle technologies that you could use so that you can eliminate that kind of need or that fake timeline in your head?
I think that, I don't know if there's a specific tool, Matt. I can speak to what worked for me, which was, at the end of the day, I had to put my head down on my pillow and, does it matter? Were my teaching colleagues paying my bills? Were they helping me when things got really tough? Because I found myself, and I think a lot of people feel this way, like, oh, I've got to stay in this job because of my coworkers or because of my clients. And it's like, when you look at the situation and kind of take yourself out of it and look around, like, is everyone else in the situation happy except for me? And so I think you really have to get comfortable asking yourself some tough questions. Sometimes that the truth may not always be exactly what you want to hear, but you've got to face it. So I would say, ask yourself some tough questions, like, are they going to help me with this? Are they going to pay my bills? Are they happy and I'm unhappy? And I think also, for me, I had a really good support system that, now that I'm thinking through this process, I had my family. I had, a really good tight network of maybe outside of my parents, probably 3 other people that I knew, I really cared about their opinion at the end of the day. I didn't really care about, the people that I was connected with on Facebook because it really, their opinion doesn't matter. So I would say to someone listening to this, if they're feeling that pressure of, I've got to achieve this timeline by this date. And, first of all, is it what you really want? And if it's not and you want to change your mind, do you have the support of that immediate network that's connected to you? I think.
And I think that's so important too. Humans, we're social beings, right? And something that I learned, especially over this summer, was just who you hang out with dictates a lot more, maybe more than you want, how your life will actually turn out. So I really love that you mentioned that your support system is so important.
It is. It doesn't have to be your parents. It could be, some, 2 to 3 really good friends that they're going to be there for you if you need to move in with them temporarily or if they need to support you like emotionally. Like, I think you definitely need that at the very least.
Totally agree with you. That's all I have for you though, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
If people want to check you out, get to know you more, where could they go?
I would say check me out first on Facebook. I'm there all the time. So you could just look me up. Jessica, my last name is Terzakis, Terzakis. I think there's only one of me. So you'll find me there. And then obviously on Instagram as well. Same first name, same last name.
And just your Facebook page, is it?
Yep.
Okay. I'll leave a link for that down below then. Thank you guys for listening. This has been another episode. Again, please leave a like, subscribe. And again, please check out Jessica. She's been awesome, I think, at least. So
thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. Okay.